years to figure out.
They'll make their decisions, and they've been doing a good job and very professional.
And that was Emily Rao reporting. To discuss all this, let's bring in Kenneth Vecchio, a Republican strategist and attorney, and Robin Byro, a Democratic strategist. First, I want to see if I can get agreement from both of you that a one-week FBI investigation, no harm, no foul, it's helpful to everybody.
I've been consistent on this. Even a week ago when we were talking about it, I have no problem with there being a little bit of a delay, as long as it's not being used as a tactic to delay it so far that it affects the midterms. And I don't see any harm or foul, as you put it, in doing this. And if it makes certain Republicans and Democrats happy to give an extra week on this, it's fine.
Robin?
I think this is really good for all Americans. It's going to help us regain some trust that might have been lost with this process, specifically over everything that's happened over the last 10 days. And honestly, Republicans stand to gain the most here because they needed more transparency. And we would have, as Democrats, we would have called them out on this headed into the midterms. So this actually should be good for Republicans so long as that FBI investigation checks out.
Kenneth, what kind of an investigation should it be in order to appease all sides and be a good investigation?
See, that's a great question, Tal. The entirety of this issue about an FBI investigation is really a farce, and it's a distraction. There's nothing that the FBI can do in this matter that's anything more than the U.S. Senate has already done. What the FBI does in these circumstances, they take statements from people and they report facts. Well, that's what the Senate is doing already. Usually what happens is before the hearing occurs, they present them with the statements that they've already taken. But the Senate did it on their own. Remember, the Senate has their own investigators, and they're not schlubs. You know, they're former FBI agents. They're top-notch people. So the notion that the FBI is going to do anything further is pretty much an absurdity in a legal sense.
Well, Robin, let's suppose that the FBI goes to Mark Judge and to some of the other people that went to high school with Brett Kavanaugh and to Yale, and that they say to the FBI, look, he was drunk in these places. He did black out. He did vomit because of drinking. That would mean that Brett Kavanaugh then testified in a misleading fashion to be charitable to the Senate. What would the Democrats do at that point?
You know exactly what we would do. We would go on the attack. We would point out everything that would come out. And yes, we're still wanting to hear from Mark Judge. Mark has been basically hiding out at the beach. He's given 2 written statements, but we haven't had a chance to examine him yet. So the FBI will do that, and they're going to be investigating these other 2 claims as well.
Well, here's the reason that I raised it, and Kent, I'm going to bring this to you because you're a former judge. Under federal jury instructions, there's one instruction, I'm going to read it to you. It says, if a witness is shown knowingly to have testified falsely about any material matter, you have a right to distrust such witness's other testimony, and you may reject all the testimony of that witness. So couldn't the senators, if they conclude that Kavanaugh misled them about his past drinking, they can reject his accusations, his denials that he never assaulted anybody?
That's called faults in one, faults in all. And the Senate can do the same thing, and so can the FBI and federal investigators with Ford,
Absolutely.
who may have presented numerous different conflicting statements during the entirety of this charade that conflicted with things she specifically stated under oath. And with Brett Kavanaugh, nobody is going to be able to testify to whether he blacked out, because that's called something that goes on in his own mens rea.
But there would be some people who would see if he was passed out.
Yeah, well, he did say that he went to sleep sometimes after drinking, which normal people do. And I think that this is part of the entire distraction, is picking out things from his yearbook. Let's get real here. Under these circumstances, this is a legal joke, Ford's case. It starts out as a he said, she said case, which is 50% possible that it's true.
Or they said.
Wait, yep, that's where it gets to. A they said, which makes it worse than a 50-50 case. The he said, she said is enough to not ruin somebody's career and their life. Wait, give me 1 second on this.
All right.
It goes to a they said case, like Tal is just saying, because now you've got 4 people who refuse to corroborate her story. She has a retrieved memory versus a real memory. And then on top of it, she can't tell us when and where it happened. And the when thing is super important because it takes away his alibi. If she could have pinpointed when it happened, he could have pointed to his calendar and said, this is where I was on that specific day.
It's not a criminal trial. It's about a judge trying to prove his credibility. Does he sound 100% credible to you?
I don't believe in any of that. As a former judge and a guy who's the author of the best-selling criminal law books in the country, I can't tell if somebody's telling the truth. Some people lie well, some people lie bad, some people tell the truth well, some people tell the truth bad.
Robin, how about you? Did you believe Brett Kavanaugh when he denied assaulting anybody in high school and college, and denied blacking out, and denied that he ever vomited because he was drunk?
No, he seemed a little less than credible to me when he said that he wouldn't, basically was avoiding the questions about an FBI investigation when we had Dr. Ford saying that she would welcome one. So right then and there, I had a hard time believing that he was credible. He honestly came off to me like an angry drunk, just calling a spade a spade. Except
he was sober. And let me ask you this, Robin. Would you like to be investigated? Would you ever call for an investigation yourself? Say, yeah, why don't you come in here and ruin my life and my family's life for another 3 months or 6 months or even a week? Anybody that's being investigated doesn't want to be investigated. It belies all common sense and human emotion to say, yeah, I'd like to be investigated by the FBI.
If somebody claimed charges against me that were false, I would absolutely want to be investigated by the FBI to clear my name, because he's going to have a dark cloud
with the U.S.
over
Senate.
his name.
No, you wouldn't. You'd be happy with the U.S. Senate investigating you and getting a pass.
But there's this thing called exculpatory evidence. The FBI could come back with exculpatory evidence showing that Kavanaugh's right, that these accusations are wrong, and here's the evidence that establishes that.
Yeah, but right now, we already know that Kavanaugh is right, because Ford's presentation of her case vis-a-vis the Democrats who supported it in her comes up completely empty.
But
it goes from 50-50 to less than 1%.
There is corroboration from her psychologist notes, contemporaneous people who said that she told them at the time. She may have misremembered at the time, and that's why these people remember her saying Brett Kavanaugh 30-some years ago. But still, isn't that something for somebody other than the Senate to make a determination?
No, I think that that's absolutely meaningless, because a person could lie 35 years ago, lie 10 years after about the same thing, and lie today about it and tell 50 million people like she did yesterday. Telling the extra people doesn't make it any more true. I don't know what happened here. Nobody knows 100% what happened here, but the evidence really shows it's extremely likely that Brett Kavanaugh is telling the truth.
Robin, is it fair that public pressure is playing such a big role in this entire procedure?
Yes, there is. There was extreme public pressure. We saw that today. I think, honestly, that's partly what happened with Senator Flake when he was in the elevator and confronted with those sexual assault survivors. But I'm glad that they got their voices heard. I know that several of them today, it was looking like that there would be no FBI investigation. So I'm glad that they're feeling somewhat validated. I think that's important because, as we know, according to the CDC, 60% of sexual assault cases go unreported. So,
right.
You know, it's just a fact.
Well, we have one more week to debate it.
Right, and I think it's also a fact that if the Republicans had the votes to get him confirmed this weekend, there would be no FBI investigation, but you had just enough Republicans who were wavering who needed it. Kenneth, Vecchio, Robin, Byro, thank you both so much for coming on. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Coming up, Tesla CEO Elon Musk is in trouble with government